Welcome to Nugget 81 with Steve Groman. In the last Nugget, we talked about a lot of the contradictions and the corrections that evolutionists are making and that they discuss in the various science magazines. And I see today you have picked the one on food. It's from Scientific American, October 2019, and the title is Obesity on the Brain.
Well, I wanted to just dissect this article. It's rather interesting, to say the least. God put us on this earth to live in the environment that's here, to eat the available food that's here. And I guess you call it the subtitle. It says, Ultraprocessed foods seem to trigger neural signals that make us want more and more calories, unlike other foods in the Western diet. The article starts, nutrition researcher Kevin Hall strives to project a Zen-like state of equanimity. In his often contentious field, he says he is more bemused than frustrated by the tendency of other scientists to, quote, cling to pet theories despite overwhelming evidence that they are mistaken. Some of the experts, he tells me with a sly smile, quote, have a fascinating ability to rationalize away studies that don't support their views.
All right, well, I remember when we talked about this, we touched on the Zen-like. Why was he even saying Zen-like? And then the empty carbs, and that we're getting food that is so empty of nutrition that we are not eating correctly, and we are eating too much because our bodies are wanting food. They're wanting nutrition, and we're just not giving the proper nutrition to our bodies.
That's true in a big degree. Let's see what this article says. Among those views is the idea that particular nutrients such as fats, carbs, and sugars are to blame for our alarming obesity pandemic. So what they did is they've researched and they've done some studies and such. They cut carbohydrates to very low levels. This is surprising to many people. In the end, they found no meaningful difference in body fat loss or calorie expenditure between the very low-carb diet and the baseline high-carb, high-sugar diet. The scientists published the first results in 2015 in the journal Cell Metabolism, and the second set in 2016 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. If it's not carbohydrates, then what is to blame for our global obesity problem?
So we can't eat carbs?
Apparently you can eat carbs, according to these guys. Yeah.
Well, no, people were going on that diet that was a low-carb diet, and a lot of people that we know that were greatly overweight, it worked for a while. They lost an initial amount of weight, but then they never could get where they really wanted.
They say ultra-processed foods often contain a combination of nutritive and non-nutritive sweeteners that Small is one of the scientists here they're talking with, produces surprising metabolic effects that result in particularly potent reinforcement effects. That is, eating them causes us to want more of these foods. And that is a very true statement. A lot of times if I'll say go on a diet, I hate to use that kind of terminology, but we decide we're going to eat better and we cut out chips and candies and all that kind of stuff.
Snickers bars.
Yeah, we really don't want them.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well,
we always want a Snickers bar.
I guess we always want a Snickers. You know what I mean? The craving for those items is just usually not there. What is clear is that the energetic value of food and beverages that contain both nutritive and non-nutritive sweeteners is not being accurately communicated to the brain. What is also clear is that Hall has found evidence that people eat more when they are given highly processed foods. My take on this is that when we eat ultra-processed foods, we are not getting the metabolic signal we would get from less processed foods, and that the brain simply doesn't register the total calorie load and therefore keeps demanding more. And that's one of the things we talk about with ourselves and other people also, but when we eat proper nutrition, our bodies are satisfied. The signals get there, the nutrients are there, the nutrient uptake is there, the body knows that it's satisfied. But when we eat things that are ultra-processed, that are not just natural foods, our bodies really don't know what to do with that. God put us on this earth again to eat the stuff that's here and to live in the environment that's here. And when it is manipulated, our bodies don't necessarily know what to do with that correctly. Some of these guys are rejecting the research. Some are saying the research is not accurate. Some are saying, and that's the thing with any field of science, there are very, very opposing points of view with anything. And that's the danger of any one thing only being presented in a textbook. But let me read this statement right here. It's interesting because there's a quote here. For example, in the natural world, carbohydrates almost always come packaged with fiber, whereas in ultra-processed foods, fiber is either not there at all or included in a form not found in nature. And it is rare to find carbohydrates and fat in the same food in nature. But ultra-processed foods tend to have both of them in one package. And this is where that discrepancy you're talking about comes in. Some of these people are saying this is what we do, it doesn't matter. Some are saying yes, it does matter. Bottom line is, what does God say? He put us here to eat the foods that's here. By and large, I'm not telling everybody to be vegetarian. I don't mean to imply that at all. If we would just eat more natural things in a wholesome, organic type of foods, everybody would do better off. We know that when we eat that way. Small and other scientists speculate that ultra-processed foods, in some sense, resemble addictive drugs and that consuming them leads to not satisfaction but yearning for more. A neuroscientist at MIT says that, who happens to be a recognized expert on habit formation, had an interesting thing to say. It says that external cues, like the mere sight of a candy bar, can provoke a reflex response that causes the brain to encourage a behavior almost automatically. Part of what's happening when habits form is chunking. You learn a behavior pattern, your brain packages the whole sequence, including the beginning and the end markers. And, with our Walk in Faith meetings, I actually talk about this very thing. When we repeat a behavior, a feedback loop develops that stores the behavior as a chunk of data. That is exactly what's taking place, because when you learn a behavior pattern, your brain packages the whole sequence, including the beginning and the end markers, and you don't have to think about it any further. Eating large amounts of ultra-processed foods may actually change brain circuitry in ways that increase sensitivity to food cues.
Well, I see here it says something, when you give rats junk food diets, some gain weight, but others do not. In those that become obese, their dopamine systems changed and they became hypersensitive to food cues. They became super focused on that one reward.
Let's go back to, like I was talking about earlier, but with our Walk in Faith meetings, I try to explain this to people oftentimes, whether it's food, whether it's drugs, or just some kind of addictive behavior. Our bodies are chemical manufacturing plants. Oftentimes people aren't looking for the Snickers bar. They're not looking for the drug of some sort. They're not looking for the addiction of some sort. They're looking for that dopamine rush. They're looking for the satisfaction feel. And that's exactly what this is talking about, because these rats, they're talking about how they would seek that pleasure state. And that's exactly what people do oftentimes. We just do. And that's why food can become a habit-forming type of a thing. They say in the real world, some people mix foods in a way that they shouldn't. And then they go and talk about how another possible problem is overconsumption, because we eat quickly because we're always in a rush, and therefore our bodies can't assimilate, can't process everything correctly. So there are all kinds of factors that factor into this thing. But once again,
the point is that it isn't that we're eating, like this one guy, he says it's because we're eating ultra-processed foods. Some others are just saying it's because of the way we eat these ultra-processed foods.
Right, basically the way we eat them and the reason that we eat them.
And the study shows that the rats that are given the same thing, some do, some don't.
The problem is they leave out God. They leave out the fact that God made these bodies to respond and to do what they are designed to do. These bodies that we walk around with are chemical manufacturing plants. They are designed to break down things. They're designed to defend themselves. They're designed to function the way that they're designed to function. When we introduce an alternative to what God intended, it can create all kinds of problems. The issue here, in my mind, is these people are all looking at the problem, and they're trying to solve the problem or figure out what the problem is. They're not looking at it as there is no God, but they're looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, that we just evolved these mechanisms. So what is the process by which all this is taking place? The bodies typically will do what they're designed to do. If we give them things that are not healthy for them, they will do what they're supposed to do, but they can't. The body is going to respond to whatever it is that we do with it. The article ends, we can change our diet to minimize the damage, and for now, I think that's where we need to set our sights. Once again, they're just going to try to pacify over the issue. The food industry can help, perhaps designing more foods with less processing, but people have to show that they want such foods to buy more of it. And then he says, I'm no evangelist. That's an interesting statement. But I do think public demands on food system is more powerful than any governmental regulation. And his job is, as it says here at the end of the article, to get the science right. They're looking at it from a pure secular scientific perspective. In my opinion, is where the problem is.
We're not designed to eat processed food, and some can say that it doesn't hurt us, and some can say that it does. We know that God did not design ultra-processed foods, right?
Correct.
Thank you. This is a listener-supported ministry, and if you are enjoying these nuggets and the other videos that we have been producing and putting on our YouTube channel, Steve Groman, and on Facebook, we certainly appreciate if you are able to partner with us on a monthly basis or even consider a one-time donation. We are a listener-supported ministry. Thank you.